you were taught, you said in that speech at university in Queensland, there were three elements to a contract: the offer, the acceptance, and then there were the terms and conditions. Now, there were no terms and conditions, were there, of these drug companies? And those, well, if there were, anyway, they weren't made available to us. I kept on saying, just show us a piece of paper. I mean, you quote this immunisation handbook, which is a government handbook, which no one's heard of course, which states that people have to be fully informed, quote, about the risks of the drug before they take it. Were Australians fully informed?
No, they weren't. And they weren't, you have to provide consent as well. And they were actually coerced into taking the vaccine.
We were lied to, weren't we?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Lied to by government and Big Pharma.
Yeah.
I mean, you cite myocarditis, which is an infection which can weaken the heart, and the Therapeutic Goods Administration has admitted it's an autoimmune disease. But this Pfizer vaccine, you say, creates an autoimmune response. That is, the vaccine attacks healthy cells. But this is the guts of it. I mean, which government won't address and should be addressed.
Well, just to be clear on that, so just so I don't want to get you, if you do post this on Facebook, the vaccine goes inside the cell and then it takes over the cell's reproductive, the protein-producing part called the ribosomes. Now, that gets the proteins produced from that gets input into the cell membrane, and then the T cells will then notice that there's these foreign proteins in the cell membrane and identify that as a sick cell, and then they will come in. So it's the vaccine generates an immune response, a killer T cell response against your own what was a healthy cell.
That's it. But as you say in the speech, Big Pharma never tested the drug on immune-compromised patients. That's patients who can't fight off infections.
That's correct. Yeah.
So these drugs weren't tested on frail people or people with comorbidities.
Yeah, and it wasn't also tested for vaccine-enhanced disease as well, where eventually if you give someone too much of the same drug, your body builds up a tolerance. Now, we all know when it comes to antibiotics, you're told not to overuse antibiotics because bacteria will build up a resistance to the bacteria. It is no different to a virus, except a virus mutates much easier than bacteria. So if you overuse these vaccines trying to kill a virus, the body will actually build up an immune response to the actual vaccine and the antibodies produced by that vaccine. So, it's a similar thing. So that's known as a vaccine-associated disease. I mean, and they tested for that.
Yeah, I mean, that Senate inquiry, Pfizer and Moderna couldn't explain why their vaccines caused myocarditis, but they never actually tried to find out before they rolled the vaccine out.
Well, quite possibly. I mean, we don't know what they knew and what they didn't. They may very well have known and not said anything. Hence why they didn't actually do that testing and were happy to let it go through before they tested, thinking, just seeing the dollars in their eyes. So we don't know but they should have. I mean, and that's the point. And they'll go, well, there was no evidence. They often say, well, there was no evidence that the vaccine was going to do that. But the reason why there was no evidence was that they never actually tested for all the possible risks that the vaccine could have induced.
So they didn't know what they were selling, and Morrison and Co., the government and all those state governments, didn't know what they were buying.
Well, that's right. And look, I mean, not that I want to defend the politicians, but, the politicians were forced because of the worldwide hysteria generated by the media and whoever else.
Yes.
They were told this thing was going to work. Now, to be fair to most politicians, early on, they didn't know that it wasn't going to work, right? So, they've gone, right, they've rolled it out. But my view is once it became apparent in late 2021 that young, healthy people were being injured by the vaccine, step one, and then by early 22 that it wasn't even stopping infection because we had, millions of people catching COVID despite the fact that they were double or triple vaccinated. That's it. The rollout should have stopped.
That's it.
And regardless of all that, they should have always taken care of those people injured by a vaccine. It doesn't matter, what, they were more worried about the narrative and politicians have gone and put the narrative in front of the people because they felt if they treated these people and gave them attention, that would undermine the rollout of the vaccine. Well, too bad. You said the thing was safe. You got it wrong. And coming back to capitalism again, the only time you've made a mistake is when you've made a mistake and you don't do anything about it. Now, anyone that's invested capital into a business, if you're losing money you know you've got to stop doing what you're doing or you're going to lose more money, right? This is that downside risk and the true, risk reward paradigm. But of course, these politicians weren't the ones getting ill. It wasn't their money that they were spending. So they kept trying, they basically adopted a cover-up approach, including the bureaucrats, I should add, adopted a cover-up approach where it's like, oh, well, the vaccine was, it didn't stop transmission or infection, but you didn't get as crook as what we thought you were going to get, which was all rubbish anyway, because we knew early on that fit, healthy people, a working age population didn't get seriously ill from COVID. Might have been knocked around for a couple of days, but weren't seriously ill.
100%.